ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. For an A pre-trip, I don't have any questions. So I'm gonna look underneath the truck. I'm looking for puddles that would be transmission fluid, engine oil, coolant, power steering fluid. I'm also looking that the truck is not leaning left or right. That could be a broken suspension part or a flat tire. From there, I go up top to my cab lights. They're securely mounted, not bent, broken, or cracked, amber in color and clean. My headlight is securely mounted, not bent, broken, or cracked. It's clear and it's clean. My four-way flasher blinker is securely mounted, not bent, broken, or cracked. It's amber in color and it's clean. My reflector is securely mounted, not bent, broken, or cracked. It's amber in color and clean. Then we'll open the hood. I'll go to my coolant reservoir, securely mounted, not bent, broken, or cracked. It's not leaking. It has a sight glass to check the level. If it's low, I will add what's needed to make it full. The cap securely mounted, not bent, broken, or cracked, not leaking. My hoses are securely mounted, not worn, torn, or frayed. They're not leaking. My intake hoses are securely mounted, not bent, broken, or cracked, or worn, torn, or frayed. They're not leaking. My exhaust, turbo exhaust, securely mounted, not bent, broken, or cracked. It's not leaking, and I would look for soot to indicate a leak. My alternator is securely mounted, not bent, broken, or cracked. It is belt driven, and my belt is securely mounted, not worn, torn, or frayed. And it has between 1/2 inch and 3/4 of an inch of deflection. My harnesses for my alternator are securely mounted, not bent, broken, or cracked. My water pump is securely mounted, not bent, broken, or cracked. It's not leaking, and it is gear driven, and the hoses are securely mounted, not bent, broken, or cracked, or worn, torn, or frayed, and they're not leaking. From there, we'll go around. I could go ahead if I want to right here and get this radiator hose. It's securely mounted, not bent, broken, or cracked, or worn, torn, or frayed. I can get it from this side or the other side because I can see it from either. I'll go ahead and do it and be done with it. We'll come over here. I start at the firewall, work my way out. All my electrical harnesses, all in here, are securely mounted. They're not worn, torn, or frayed. My air filter canister is securely mounted, not bent, broken, or cracked. My intake line here is securely mounted, not bent, broken, or cracked, or worn, torn, or frayed, and it's not leaking. My power steering reservoir is securely mounted, not bent, broken, or cracked. It's not leaking, and it has a sight glass so I can check the level. If it was low, I would add what's needed to make it full. My engine oil dipstick, I would remove it, wipe it clean. You don't have to do that. You just tell him how you would check the oil. Mm-hmm. Wipe it clean, put it back in, pull it back out, check the level. If it's low, I would start by adding a gallon and then go from there, okay? My hoses from my power steering reservoir are securely mounted. They're not worn, torn, or frayed, and they're not leaking. And they lead here. You see this fitting right here? On this truck, right below that fitting, that's your power steering pump. It's securely mounted, not bent, broken, or cracked. It's not leaking. It is gear driven. That's one of the third of your driven parts you have to name. So from there, I'll go in here. This is my air compressor and governor. You just put them together. Air compressor and governor, securely mounted, not bent, broken, or cracked. It's not leaking, and it is gear driven. Now I've named all 4 of my parts, told how they're driven. All right, my hoses leading to and from my air compressor and governor are securely mounted, and they're not worn, torn, or frayed. They're not leaking. All right, from there, we're going to talk about steering components. So we're going to do steering components, suspension components, working our way out. We're going to do our air brake parts. Then we're going to do our tire and wheel all the way out to our valve stem, working our way out. So on steering, I always do them in this order. I start with my steering column, securely mounted, not bent, broken, or cracked, and it's properly lubricated. My steering gearbox is securely mounted with these 3 bolts. It's not bent, broken, or cracked, and it's not leaking because it's got fluid in it, okay? This is my pitman arm. Securely mounted, not bent, broken, or cracked. And starting with the pitman arm, the whole rest of the way through your steering components, you'll say it has a castle nut and a car key. This is my drag link, securely mounted, not bent, broken, or cracked. It's got castle nuts and Carter keys. This is my steering knuckle right here. So technically it's an upper control arm, but steering knuckle is all you gotta say. Securely mounted, not bent, broken, or cracked, has a castle nut and a Carter key. And then last on steering, I've got my tie rod end and tie rod. Securely mounted, not bent, broken, or cracked. Got a castle nut and a Carter key. That's it for steering, okay? Suspension. I'm gonna start with my shock absorber. Securely mounted, not bent, broken, or cracked. It's not leaking, even if it is, say it's not. And the bushings are not worn, torn, or frayed. And then I have a front and a rear leaf spring hanger, okay? Leaf spring hanger or spring mounts, whatever you want to call them. They're securely mounted, not bent, broken, or cracked. My leaf springs are securely mounted, not bent, broken, or cracked. No illegal welds on big metal parts, I throw that in. So no illegal welds. When I talk about my wheel, I'm gonna say no illegal welds on it too. On my leaf springs, they're securely mounted, not bent, broken, or cracked. No illegal welds, and you say they're not shifted or missing on the leaf spring. U-bolts, got 2 of them, securely mounted, not bent, broken, or cracked, and the 4 nuts are in place and tight. That's it for suspension, okay? Now we're gonna do air brakes. Every time you do air brakes, you're gonna do them exactly like this. So you'll do an air brake here, you'll do one on a B on your drive axle, and you'll do one on a C pre-trip on one axle of your trailer, okay? If the truck you're using in Jackson has 2 rear drive axles, you're only gonna do 1 axle, okay? And if on the trailer, you'll only do 1 axle, okay? All right, so air brakes. I've got my airline securely mounted, not bent, broken, or cracked, or worn, torn, or frayed, and it's not leaking. This is my brake chamber right here. Securely mounted, not bent, broken, or cracked. It's not leaking because it has air coming into it. This is my brake clamp, securely mounted, not bent, broken, or cracked, and it's tight. Then I have my slack adjuster right here. Securely mounted, not bent, broken, or cracked. It's not leaking. This fork piece right here is my push rod. Securely mounted, not bent, broken, or cracked. The 2 are connected with these 2 pins right here, with safety pins or Carter pins, whatever you want to call them. And then you tell them with my brakes released. So you got both your valves pushed in, tires are chocked. You couldn't pull the push rod more than 1 inch. You got to say that when you do air brakes. If you don't tell him that, everything you've talked about up to that point, you don't get credit for. You got to say, I can't pull my push rod more than 1 inch. That's it for air brakes. You're going to say that exact same thing every time, okay? From there, you're going to talk about the inside wheel. It's securely mounted, not bent, broken, or cracked, no illegal welds, no foreign contaminants, and there's no visible gap between the wheel and the bead of my tire. That would be a flat tire, right? All right, I've got my brake drum, securely mounted, not bent, broken, or cracked, no illegal welds, no foreign contaminants, and on the brake drum, you gotta say no missing hardware. I don't know what they're talking about. A brake drum is a solid piece of metal, but that's what's on their test. Brake pads, securely mounted, not bent, broken, or cracked, no illegal welds, no foreign contaminants, and they have enough pad material. You used to have to say they have a 1/2 inch. Now you just say they have enough. Okay. All right, so I'm through in there, working my way around. Now I'm gonna talk about my tire. So I kind of grab my sidewalls. My tires securely mounted, No abrasions, bulges, or cuts. My tread wear is even, and I have at least 4/32 of tread depth. I would check with a tire gauge, with a tread depth gauge. 4/32 up here, rest of the way they're 2. Steering axle's 4, everything else is 2/32. All right, my wheel. So I did my inside wheel, now I'm gonna do my outside wheel. Securely mounted, not bent, broken, or cracked. No illegal welds, no foreign contaminants, no visible gap between the wheel and the bead of my tire. My lug nuts, none are missing. They're securely mounted, not bent, broken, or cracked. I would look for rust trails or shiny threads to indicate a loose lug nut. My oil hub seal, securely mounted, not bent, broken, or cracked, and it's not leaking. If it has bolts on it, you would say they're tight. They're not missing, and they're tight, just like we do the lug nuts. If it has, which some do, they have a sight glass on them. Some of them are clear. If you can see the level, you tell them it's got a sight glass so I can check the level. If it doesn't have one, you just say it's not leaking, okay? From there, I've got my valve stem right here. My valve stem securely mounted, not bent, broken, or cracked. It's not leaking. It's got a metal cap, and I would check my air pressure with a tire gauge. That's it for an A pre-trip. That's the whole